You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, welcome to welcome to the new thing. It's the Fezcast because we've gone back to season 1, episode 1. It's just me and Matt tonight on the Fezcast recording to you. We're recording Sunday evening. But Matt, I haven't spoken to you for a while. How are you doing, mate? How's things?
Yeah, not too bad, ticking along. Yeah, we've been talking quite a lot about how a lot of us are quite busy and it's all mucking in. But I mean, hopefully this doesn't go back to the quality of season 1, episode 1. I think hopefully after 6 seasons we're a little bit better than we were. But you know.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, we seemingly do this season have an awful lot more to talk about, don't we, in relation to perhaps moans and groans and gripes and whatever. Albeit that, you know, very early on we were talking about getting beat by Cornish Pirates, weren't we, back in the day?
Yeah. Oh, that was. I think we were almost relentlessly positive for a few years. Our new listeners obviously have got my misery for a little while, but you know.
Yeah, well, we're all getting older, aren't we? All getting grumpier and everything like that. But yeah, I think we're going to call this show The Good, the Bad and the Ugly because it definitely splits into 3 things. And unfortunately, for the men's side, the good comes from those that went away with England, isn't it? And are on international duty. And so we'll leave the normal whatever happens with Queens, I do not know. We'll leave that to last because, you know, we'll build you up for that proper win because you were there yesterday, weren't you, Matt?
I was, yeah, and I will do my very best. And I think I can, for every player that I say didn't play well, I can probably pick one out that did. So, you know, that will be important to do. I'll give you some balance.
Excellent. Well, that's good. Well, let's start with the Six Nations, shall we? And let's start with, I suppose, the big game for Saracens being England versus Wales, given that there were 4 players involved from our club, 3 for England and 1 for Wales in Rhys Carey. And, you know, let's start on the positives, Matt. Jamie George, 96 years old, or however old he is now. He's got 1 more season and a bit left in him. Performance levels aren't dropping off, though, are they? He captains when Dowie Lakey's opposite number and opposition captain seemingly was losing his head and losing all sense of perspective and couldn't get a grip of the game. Jamie showed calm assurance, as he always does. Spoke nicely to Monsieur Brousset, the referee, who had an excellent game, I thought, and just got England in the ascendancy right from the top, didn't he?
He did, yeah. I mean, it's much easier to captain a game when you're on top and you're on the right side of the referee, I think. And I'm going to take umbrage with you calling Jamie 96 years old, because number 1, he's half your age. And number 2, I played age grade cricket with him. So if you're going to call him old, then it's starting to make me feel a little bit bad. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's still the primary hooker in the country, which is slightly concerning for development, because like I say, he's getting on a bit. And the 2027 World Cup... Yeah, who do you play? But yeah, no, Jamie was perfect. I think actually one of his best moments in the game came seconds before he got subbed off, where Wales had a rare attack and were on the line and we were giving away a few penalties and he had a nice calm chat with the referee and asked to speak to his players, even though there was no need to speak to them. They all know that they were going to give away a yellow card, which I'm sure you'll get onto in a second. But yeah, it just his persona is why he works as a captain, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it was, yeah, I'll have a chat with the players, then I'm hiked off and on trots Maro and Tozy, who immediately gives away a penalty. Look, I ain't going to criticise Maro for that, to be perfectly honest with you. It could have been any of those players. They were prepared to do that. They were prepared to accept that we will stop them, and if we go illegal, we can still stop them with 14 players. And Maro does what Maro does. He plays on the edge, and I'd rather have a Maro Tozy playing on the edge, giving away penalties every now and then, and the odd yellow card, than a Maro who's playing, trying to second guess himself and not take those risks. it is a risk. Sometimes you get away with it, sometimes you don't. There's occasion he didn't. He did look a bit bewildered though, and I'm not sure whether everything that's going on in his life is kind of like affecting him slightly, but it was a definite look of what the blinking heck have I done?
I mean,
Was there a warning?
obviously, because of the timing when he came on, he didn't get the chat from Jamie George to say, right, if we give away another penalty, we're getting a yellow card. He basically came onto the pitch, put his hands on the floor, and sat down for 10 minutes, and that was it, didn't he?
But when he did come back on, he was pretty damn impressive, And as we say about everything that's been going on in his life recently, with the pressures of being your club captain and being the pressures of being the international captain coming into a Six Nations tournament, where England are going in for the first time in a long time as, if not favourites, definitely up there with France. Everybody's looking at the crunch at the end of the tournament as being the big match, the big decider. And I mean, that's also taking account next week we have to go to Murrayfield, which hasn't been a happy hunting ground in recent years. But, he is performing at high levels despite all that pressure still.
He is, yeah. And, the correct call from Steve Borthwick just to give him a little run up into the game. Obviously, he missed the start of training with England because he flew to Nigeria. So, yeah, to start him on the bench as one of your better players, not put him under too much pressure in that regard, but allow him to come on and still play some minutes. It was exactly the right thing to do. And like you say, he's a consistent performer, plays on the edge. You know what you're going to get out of him. Chances are he starts next week, and chances are we get the best out of him. He's just that kind of guy. He'll throw himself in.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and I think the important thing to remember is that doesn't matter what colour shirt he's wearing, whether he's wearing the black shirt of Saracens or whatever variation it is of shirt that we wear, or the white shirt of England. He gives 100%. Which brings me on to our third player, who was
very well done.
it wasn't bad, was it? It's almost like we put this together, isn't it? Think about it. But I'll mention Duncan, who put on WhatsApp. His comment on WhatsApp was Ben Earl's having an absolutely monster game, and he did. He was superb for England yesterday. Where's that Ben Earl in a Saracen shirt this season? Which I think's slightly unfair, because I think Ben, over the years, has set himself a very high bar, and if he slips slightly off of it, even by a couple of percent, it's obvious because of the bar he set before. But there is a definite element amongst some of the support who are thinking, does he save his best for the international game as opposed to the domestic game? And I don't know, Duncan's made that point. I'll try and be fair on that, add the balance. Where do you sit on that one, Matt?
It's tricky, isn't it? I mean, I certainly think that we're seeing the best Ben Earl in an international shirt, but I think the same is true of a lot of players. International rugby is a higher standard. A lot of players do step up. That's fair enough. And we've got to remember that at club level, even Ben Earl is a very good player in a very good back row. Tom Willis obviously is Tom Willis. We've got Juan Martin Gonzalez. We've got the likes of Theo McFarlane. There's a lot of players in the Saracens back row who are performing at a high standard because they are high standard players. Ben Earl plays in a slightly different way for Saracens than he does for England because he's got a different coach and that's what he's told to do. So it's tricky to just say, he's playing well for England and he's not playing well for Saracens, because that's not necessarily true. However, there does seem to be something going on in the background potentially that means maybe we're not getting 100% out of Ben Earl. We're not getting the 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 games that we have done in seasons past. I can't put my finger on why, nor can I say that that's actually true. But, it's difficult.
Do you think it might be something to do with what number shirt he's got on? Now, Ben has said in the past that he thinks of himself as a number 8, and he's playing number 8 for England, mainly because Tom Willis has decided to go off to France and earn some Euros. We've been over that ad infinitum. But at Saracens, he doesn't play number 8. He plays open side because Tom Willis is your first choice number 8. So next year, do you see potentially that Ben Earl moves into number 8 for Saracens? And does Ben Earl then start playing at that higher level again because he's playing in his preferred position? I mean, I will say that if he's having a little bit of a not a hissy fit or a chucking the toys out the pram, but if his performance is dropping off because he's not playing in his preferred position, that's not really great as a team ethic. And, we've heard a few bits and pieces that are coming out, and, there are rumours, so we don't really want to go into them too deeply, but there may be a little bit attitudes around the club at the moment that needs dealing with, and perhaps that's why Mark's stepping back and Brendan's coming in, because Brendan won't accept those behaviours. I mean, is that part of it, do you think?
Potentially. But, I think you're right in what you're saying, that actually, because of the circumstances we've got next season, with Brendan Venter coming in as he is, Tom Willis leaving, and it seems we've missed a couple of targets in the back row that we had that may well have been number 8 players. As it stands, the squad for next season, Ben Earl is your number 8. So Brendan Venter comes in and goes, well, okay, you want to play 8? Here's your year. Here's your chance to do it. So hopefully Ben takes that opportunity and goes, okay, well, I'm going to show you why I'm the club's number 8 for the next 6, 7, 8 years, potentially. And that's fair enough. And it allows other players to come in on the flank as well. Or next week we might sign some international superstar 8 and the goalposts move. But yeah, I think, like you say, we don't know. There's all sorts of rumours around. We don't necessarily know what's going on behind the scenes at the club. We've all been told that there are people that are unhappy with certain things, but I think we've all been told that they're completely different people. Yeah. Whether Ben is one of them or not, we don't know. But there's players that want opportunities that aren't getting them. There's players that have got opportunities that not taking them as well as they should. Ben's got one next season by the look of it, and I would back him to grasp it and show why he's England and Saracens number 8 for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, the other thing as well that we always you'd say about Ben Earl is that he is developing into a leader, not only for Saracens, but also international level with the experience he gets. He's 3-4 years younger than Maro Itoje, so surely he should be looking at being the next cab off the rank when Maro decides that enough is enough, or moves, or whatever he will do. I mean, Maro's coming up to 31 now, so he hasn't got a finite time at the club. But the other Saracens player who was involved in the weekend was Rhys Curry. He came on very early on because of yellow cards being thrown around like confetti at a wedding at one point, and then came on the second half in a pretty much beaten up Welsh pack. I didn't think he did too badly, Rhys. I mean, he was one of the brighter players for Wales in a pretty abject performance, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of a wrecking ball, isn't he? So he just came on and did what he can do. But at the end of the day, your loose head prop is never going to be the game changer that Wales needed. But like I say, I don't think he did anything wrong, and he did what he could in the game. There's not an awful lot we can really say other than that.
No, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? And I also think by that time he came on, particularly the second time, England, a bit like France on Thursday night, had put on the slippers, poured a brandy, lit up a cigar and sat in a comfy chair, hadn't they? And they'd earned the right to do so because both France and England, despite brief moments or a little bit more of a moment from Ireland coming back, they were never in trouble, were they?
Not really, no. It was they kind of did everything they needed to do and nothing else is probably the best way of putting it. It wasn't a particularly dynamic performance from England. I think George Ford managed the game pretty well, as dull as it was sometimes. But yeah, I mean, what else are you supposed to do, really? In Six Nations rugby, you play 5 games, you win all of them, you win the tournament. It doesn't really matter how you win them.
No, absolutely not. Nobody will remember that at the end of the day. Now, I did mention that the Ireland's performance out in Paris, and a bit concerning, really, given that one of the names that's been touted around as potentially coming in at some point, Saracens coach, is Andy Farrell, who seemingly is overseeing a sharp decline in Ireland's as a power in the Six Nations, and perhaps has not identified players that needed, not replacing as such, but needed a succession plan, and in particular at standoff, because Johnny Sexton's there as a coach, but Sam Prendergast obviously hasn't listened to him, or if he has listened to him, he's completely ignored it, because that was as abject a performance as I've seen from a standoff
Yeah,
this weekend. And
wasn't
I
good at all.
include Finn Russell in that as well. He was bloody awful as well. But
Yeah, I think it's difficult for when you look at what's happening with Wales and with Ireland and with Scotland. When you've only got a handful of provincial sides to choose from, and specialist positions like number 10, there's not a huge locker of players to work with, and if your standards dropping from Johnny Sexton to A another, then there's not lots that Andy Farrell can do about that. But yeah, you're right. The sort of the succession planning, as potentially we see at Saracens as well. When you're so good for so long, you don't drop your best players, but it's hard to give the younger ones coming through minutes. And yeah, you're kind of seeing that. I mean, that said, an away game in France on a Thursday night against a French team that can just blow teams away when they're on song. Ireland could easily win the next 4 games in the Six Nations, and we all forget about that.
yeah, they could dig it out. I don't think they will do though. But the game that was brilliant, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I don't know if you saw it, but it was an absolute quagmire. You know, you play a game the start of February, you expect bad weather, but not necessarily in Rome. But it was abysmal weather in Rome. But it was a cracking game. And one player I want to pick out in particular that, you know, when we talked about who would you have come to Saracens if you could afford it, and if they turned around and said, right, salary cap is no more, go out and sign someone. A position that we've been struggling in is the centres. And the lad is named after a Italian liqueur, Menoncello. What a player. If that boy was playing for New Zealand or South Africa or France, everybody in the world will say he's the best player in the world at the moment. He is different custard. Or should
Absolutely.
I say, different Italian liqueur? what's an Italian custard? A different tiramisu.
Hey, I don't watch Bake Off, and nor did I watch the Italy-Scotland game. Unfortunately, I didn't really see it while I was on my way to the Stonex. But yeah, in general, an early Italy win in the Six Nations opens up the tournament brilliantly, not just for sort of the win of the whole thing, but it just means there's something to play for all the way down. But yeah, Menoncello, we've been watching him for a while. Obviously, he plays in France, looks fantastic all the time. He's one you never base how good a player is on this, but he's always someone that if you're ever playing fantasy rugby, he's in your team because he'll lose 50-0, but he'll still score you big points. He's just one of those players that is capable of breaking a gain line from centre, which, like you say, at Saracens, we're really struggling with that. So yeah, if there was ever any chance that he would come to us, not in a million years is he going to, but
No.
we'd take it.
Yeah, he's on that wish list, isn't he? Him and Anton Dupont. But I mean, Thomas Williams, I thought had a good game for Wales yesterday in a pretty behind a beaten pack and against with a clueless set of backs. I mean, he kept them in the game on a number of occasions. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see, isn't it? Well, look, we've got plenty to talk about the Six Nations over the next few weeks, and I'm sure we'll revisit it and you know, Saracens players and what they do. And I will say that Fergus Burke must be looking at the way that Finn Russell played on Sunday and thinking, well, I might get a chance at some point, because he was, well, I'm professional. It's a normal thing. You get mercurial or you get I can't be bothered. And we had the can't be bothered, didn't we, on the weekend? But let's have a quick break there. Then we'll come back and talk about some other good, which was going up to Leicester and putting 80-odd points on the Tigers in the women's game.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for £10. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at Stonex. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, yeah, we said we were going to talk about the good to start with, and it was great this afternoon. We're watching on YouTube this afternoon, which was hilarious because you watch the YouTube stuff, don't you, Matt? And you listen to the commentary, because it's own club thieves. They try and put as positive a spin on the games, and it was Summer, and I can't remember what her surname is now, and the chap who's doing the commentary. I mean, they were desperately trying to put a positive spin on the game today, but at the end of the day, Saracens turned up, did a job, and scored 81 points. And really, even when Tigers were banging on the door a little bit, never really looked in any trouble whatsoever, did they today?
Not at all. No, I mean, most people involved with the Leicester women's sides, they know they're on a bit of a hiding for this season because of what they've done with their recruitment strategy, which might pay dividends for them in a few years' time. But they've gone for a sort of university-based recruitment, and hopefully those players come good over time. But yeah, they've got to put a bit of a positive spin on a team that's conceding 60 points every game this season. But to give them some credit, they're lacking in quality. They know they're lacking in quality, but I think you and I both saw that they're certainly not lacking in effort. Right to the end, even though they're 80 points down, I think their scrum half right at the end of the game instigated a turnover and celebrated like she'd won the World Cup. It was quite something. But yeah, like you say, Saracens, we were just too good. Some players came in and got some minutes, an opportunity that has been fairly rare for them, which is great, and a few of those fringe players played very well. And we did exactly what was needed. More points on the board, 5 points in the table, and didn't concede anything. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, you talk about the fringe players have come in, and yeah, they all did very well. But I really want to talk about some of the established players, and it was really led by Marley Packer, who, I mean, Marley's another one who, I'm going to say this very quietly, just in case he is listening. He's in the, in the twilight of her career, shall we say? Coming towards the retirement years, but she's not playing that way at all. And it'd be very easy to go into a game like this and think, do you know what? Do I really want to play in a game where we're going to win anyway? I could get an injury, and that's just not in her thought pattern, is it? I mean, she goes out there and she sets the standards, and the other senior players buy into that. Your May Campbells, your Sophie Bridges, your Jess Breaches. And, they treat Leicester Tigers as if they're playing Gloucester Hartbury in the final. And because of that, they get good results, which is something that perhaps the men could learn from.
Well, it's something that the women would have learned from certainly last season and probably the season before as well, that sometimes it did take us a little while to get going in games because maybe we weren't hitting top gear too quickly and being a little bit complacent. But yeah, that is often driven by Marley Packer now, who's having her game time managed, clearly. Not always starting, sometimes coming off the bench, sometimes not involved too. But you're right, it does feed into the rest of the squad. And today was made slightly more difficult because of a late enforced change. Poor Sydney Gregson, I think, is currently not any more than a foot or two away from a toilet, unfortunately. But yeah, with Emma Hardy coming in, she played brilliantly as well. So the performance was exactly what you need against the team at the bottom of the table, and it would have been very easy to take our foot off the gas, and they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm going to say is the 2 second rows, Matt. I mean, you posted on WhatsApp a picture of a giraffe running, and it very much the old Bill McLaren Doddy Weir is like a giraffe escaped from the zoo, wasn't it? But I mean, they had a couple of runs, the pair of them, didn't they? And tries and everything. It just from 2 seasons ago where we couldn't win a line out to save our lives. We're winning line outs with dynamic second rows and back rows, and Julia on the open side as well had a fantastic game against her old club. I mean, they just superb work rate, work ethic, and they got the rewards for it.
Yeah, and I think that was Jodie Verghese first start, I think, in the league, and having had a very, very good cup campaign. It shows that development pipeline is working. I mean, she came in, I think she was playing for Loughborough Lightning a little bit, picked up a few injuries, but had obviously done enough for Alex Osterbury and others to spot her and bring her in. And yeah, she had a fantastic day today. And yeah, we've obviously with Leicester offloading a lot of their players. We picked out one of the better ones in Julia Omakwale, who had a good day. I think she was expecting to take a few hits from her old teammates, which she did. But yeah, everybody on that pitch, whether it whether it was an established international player like Jess Breach, who had the freedom of Leicester for quite a while, to those players that were coming in, they were brilliant.
Yeah, it was lovely to see, and I think what was brilliant as well is the one thing that we've been concerned about is the fact that Liv Apps is off doing sevens, which is her preferred thing with Canada. Where are we going to miss her? Tori Sellers has obviously learned from Liv Apps because Tori had a fantastic game. The speed of ball from ruck, the speed of pass from ruck, and the accuracy of pass from ruck was 95% of the time absolutely spot on. And you didn't, I mean, I think if you had Liv Apps is such a good player that we would have scored 200 points out there quite easily because she is a cheat code, isn't she? I mean, that goes without saying. But Tori, she knows that Ella's coming back fairly soon. So she's got to step up and make sure that she stays there and is that number one scrum half now.
Yes, yeah. I mean, she's been quite unfortunate over the last couple of years in that the opportunities that she's had, she's then got injured herself. But yeah, it was also quite good for Tori to have a good bit of game time alongside Amelia McDougall. I mean, her and Amelia were sort of the England under-20s, 9 and 10 together for quite a while. And it's fantastic that we've got them together at club level. And if that's your 9-10 pairing in 10 years' time, we're doing pretty well, aren't we? But yeah, good day for Tori, good day for Amelia, and a good day for, I think, everyone coming off the bench as well. Actually, the standard never really dropped.
Yeah, I talk about that young back row who came off the pitch and had 2 assists. What police force has Poppy Cleo joined? Because can you let me know? Because I am not causing any trouble anywhere near anywhere where she might be stationed. But it's an interesting job choice of Poppy going forward, isn't it? That she's decided that she wants to become a police officer.
I think it very much fits with her personality. It's like Poppy's almost been playing for almost 3 or 4 years now with a point to prove, and she's proving it over and over again. I mean, you and I were critical from afar of the way Poppy maybe dropped off slightly as the game got more and more professional. She didn't necessarily develop with it in the way that we expected, but certainly at club level over the last 2 or 3 years, she's just got on with it fantastic. And yeah, she was up for player of the match despite coming on quite late because she came on and as you said, a couple of assists, almost sort of basketball style, Harlem Globetrotters rugby. She was brilliant. So.
Yeah. Now the only concern I did have is, should we have scored more points? I mean, 81. Am I being a bit greedy here? We did leave an awful lot of points off of the kicking tee, and Amelia came on, and I thought she had a really good game. But Zoe is so good off the tee, isn't she? I mean, she's as good as a lot of male kickers in the professional game. She has that quality. So I think it's a bit unfair to criticise someone when you are with the best women's kicker of all time, anywhere in the game, full stop. To criticise her for not getting some of those kicks, but it is something that we really need to look at, and the media perhaps needs to work on. I think. Perhaps.
I think she's identified that in her own game. I think. I mean, you're right. For a long time, Zoe Harrison was the only player that could kick in open field, and was one of the few players that had a kicking percentage rate sort of equivalent to decent men's rugby as well. That standard has gone up, but it still is really Zoe Harrison and Emma Singh basically that are the two most accurate kickers in the league. And then I think there is a bit of a gap for most other players. But yeah, I think Amelia has looked at her kicking. It's certainly come on since she first started playing for Saracens, I think. But yeah, there's always going to be that little gap, I think, just because of how much of a standard Zoe has set. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's I'm trying to think how many points it was left out there. It was a reasonable amount, which when you're 81-0 up doesn't matter too much. But they can and do now make the difference in those tighter games that we'll get towards the end of the season.
Indeed. Now, in support of Amelia, what I will say is that her accuracy is pretty good. Every kick she got was within a reasonable area of where it was meant to be. Her problem is distance, I think. That's what she's got to work on, is and how she gets more power into her kicks. And perhaps, if Mr. Contractual mention, despite him not playing this weekend, Owen Farrell's listening to us, maybe he might give Amelia a ring, because I know he's worked on his distance as opposed to his accuracy and changed the way that he addresses the ball off the tee. So, that might be an interesting place to go to see about developing that length as opposed to the accuracy, because the accuracy's there. Trouble is, obviously, if you then work on the length, the accuracy goes the opposite direction. It's a very fine balance, but I think that's the only thing she needs to build into that game off the tee.
And if anything, that's the best way around for a girl in her early 20s to not quite have the leg strength yet to kick a ball quite as far as she might need to. Sometimes that's workable.
Well, I suppose, if you're Owen Farrell, you're 14 and a half, 15 stone, whereas Amelia's probably 9 stone dripping wet.
Yeah,
so there is a huge difference.
And a part-time rugby player. So it's definitely something that can be worked on. I'm sure it is.
Now, I just want to finish this little bit off about the women by starting off with the bad section of the Fezcast, and it's not really a bad thing, but it's just an observation I make. Now, we're used to hearing Nige Eaton at StoneX. And to be perfectly honest with you, there's people down in Hendon who can hear Nige Eaton when he really sparks up. But when you're at an away match, you really shouldn't be hearing Nige singing the songs. But you could, because I would imagine today there was probably as many, if not more, Saracen supporters there as Leicester Tiger supporters. And that's terrible, because let's be honest about it, Leicester is a rugby city. And, they get 30,000 people go to see Leicester Tigers men. There was no Six Nations on today. The games had already all been played. They weren't in the Prem Cup anywhere, I don't think, today, were they, Leicester? So why couldn't the people of Leicester, the rugby fans of Leicester, get down to Nasley Woods, Welford Roads, LS22, or whatever the bloody hell the name is. But why couldn't they get down there and fill that one stand? Because, we say that you go to StoneX and, we only have one stand open for the women. But, that is 75% full. I reckon that was 20% full today. And that's just not good enough. Yeah, I know, we talked off air, didn't we, and said, the product maybe isn't great. You're going along to pay money to see your team get thumped every week. But if you don't give them the support, they don't grow, they don't feel wanted, And as I say, if you're a senior player coming to the end of your career and Leicester Tigers come knocking on the door, why on earth are you going to go there as opposed to anywhere else if you were thinking of moving? Because what's the point? You might as well play at Leicester Old Boys third 15 pitch.
Yeah, it's surprising how late to the party Leicester were with women's rugby, given that they're such a big rugby club. And you're right, the people don't turn up to a game when you're going to get beaten every week like that. But we've seen with Saracens, with Gloucester Hartpury, Harlequins, Bristol, even Ealing at this point. If you market your team well enough, if you put them on an almost even keel in your general club advertising, then people do start to turn up. Yes, the attendances at StoneX for women's games are 10%, if that, what they are of the men's games. But that's still a development over fairly recent years. A regular crowd of 500 plus was unheard of a few years ago. But that's come from the club going, no, we are going to put all of the posters, all of the billboards around the ground have a men's player and a women's player on them. You've got Owen Farrell standing next to Zoe Harrison. You've got Sydney Gregson next to Maro Itoje. It just works like that, and it just filters into the rest of the club. You're not gonna pick up every fan. Not every fan of Saracens as a men's rugby club. Not everyone has an interest in women's rugby. They should, but they don't. And it's a simple fact. But if your club just aren't going to put the effort in themselves, why is anyone going to come through the gates?
Yeah, and it's not as if Leicester Tigers are particularly bad at marketing their men's games.
No,
they can't be, because they get 30,000 people there. And yeah, fair dues. It's in a city where they have one football club who are unfair to middling. I've had 10 years ago an amazing moment in their history. But, in a city their size, 500,000 people, whatever it is in Leicester, they get 30,000 people. Surely they could get 1,000 people to go to a women's match, you would have thought. As you say, with some clever marketing, with a bit of expenditure, with a bit of faith in the products and a bit of, what we've got, a little bit of arrogance maybe even needed, just to, Billy Big balls yourselves up.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, even to exist, they've actually had to just sort of bump out an established women's team in Lichfield rather than actually create anything themselves. So it's quite strange how they just haven't quite got there yet. But...
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as Bath, isn't it? The fact that Bath haven't got a women's team, I think there should be a... Oh, here we go. I'm going to throw an idea out to the RFU and to the Premiership Rugby. I think that if you're a Premiership Rugby side in the men's game, you have to make a commitment to the women's game in some way to support a team to come up. And that will grow the women's game. And particularly on the back of a Women's World Rugby Cup, where you've got 3 or 4 players playing on that field who are part of the England winning Rugby World Cup women's team, it's a huge own goal. Even if it's publicising the team that's coming to beat you up. Yeah, it's a huge own goal that they've missed there at Leicester Tigers.
Yeah, and Bath is a good case in point, really, because they've got a decent team at championship level in women's rugby that I can't remember whether they won the league or not, but they're certainly up there. But they've not invested in it enough yet to warrant playing at the top level. And again, for a club that's presumably winning silverware in men's rugby for a little while and putting a lot of money into it, it's the longer they leave it, because like you say, eventually they probably will have to have a team in the top flight, because the whole idea of ousting some of the teams that they did and bringing some others in was so that women's teams were linked to men's teams. Bath should have one. And the fact that they've just not invested in it enough to do that yet, it's going to get harder and harder and harder when they finally get told that they pretty much have to.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there, Matt. And, if anybody's listening from the various powers that be, do get in contact with us. And either come on to explain your reasons why it hasn't grown, or just offer us a consultancy role between the two of us. We'll sort it out. Anyway, let's have a break there, Matt. Yeah, I'm just soiking out there for 25 grand a year, mate. That's all I'm after. Mind you, apparently there's a job going as a US ambassador as well, isn't there? So, I mean, I might go for that one. That's got a decent payoff as well, but there we go. Never mind. Anyway, let's have a break there and we'll come back and we'll talk about the ugliness of getting beaten by bloody Quins again.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Osterbury here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, there you go. We come into part 3 and we've been reasonably happy, haven't we, Matt, over the first 2 parts there. But now's time to have a chat. I mean, we haven't got the 3 word reviews because Barry's decided to bugger off to Cornwall for a holiday or something, which is a bit much of him. I mean, you thought you got somebody else to drive and he could just sit there or go on a train and do the 3 word reviews, but obviously he couldn't do that. But, we're only joking, Barry, don't worry. But I can imagine what the 3 word reviews would be, and it would be something along the lines of consistency, inconsistency, 1 week up, next week down. It's, we go away to Newcastle, we thump them. I mean, we got a really good result there, put yourselves in prime position for a good run at some silverware, and then Quins come to town and we seem to, where Quins get up for it, we don't seem to do the same, do we?
No, and I fortunately bumped into John Mannings at the game, and his words were bang on. It was a mix of bloody entertaining and absolutely shite. It was just there's no 2 ways about it. I like myself and John both agreed that we usually find the result secondary in Prem Cup rugby. Yes, we want to be at the forefront of it and we want to win the trophy, because that would mean that our sort of developing players are developing well and they're good. And like I say, we have an opportunity this season to be involved in the latter stages of the Prem Cup, and we really should have taken it. I don't really know where to start, to be honest, with the performance, because I don't think, as a whole, in general, don't think we were that bad. We scored 40 points after all. Defence was probably a little bit optional from both sides, but the points we conceded were generally from poor defensive positioning or outright mistakes, and to be honest, down to 2 or 3 people. But there were half a dozen, maybe more, that actually shone pretty well in that game. So, what do you want first?
Well, let's have a talk about 2 players that you mentioned in WhatsApp to me, and the first one is Charlie Bracken. Now, we've been pumping Charlie for quite some time, and we think he's first choice scrum half when he's fit, and unfortunately, it appears that he may well have done himself a proper nasty one in the game. We won't, say what we've heard, because we'll wait for the club to make that official. But if what we've heard is right, then Charlie's going to be out for a considerable period of time, unfortunately. And we wish Charlie all the best, obviously. But Charlie's been ripping up trees this season. He's really stepped up. But in this game, he had a bad game. Now, every player is allowed to have a bad game, and I think Charlie, given the performances he has done at a higher level of game, gives him that credit that he is allowed to have an off day every now and then, Matt.
Yeah. To be honest, the bits that went wrong for him were elements of his game that we'd already kind of identified were the weaker sides of his game. We've been singing his praises of how quick his pass is, how accurate his distribution is, and his ability just to look either side of a ruck and make a snap decision. But his box kicking isn't his strong point. And unfortunately, in the game, he kicked one straight up in the air, which was sort of patted back, and then obviously patted back to nobody. So it led to a Quins player just having a nice stroll through. And then a second one, which, to be honest, he was a little bit unlucky with, because initially it looked like a very good box kick from almost inside his own 22. Could have gone out with a favourable bounce. It would have gone out for a 50-22 or held up, but it went all the way dead. We came back for a scrum, and they scored directly from the scrum. So, yeah, unfortunate for Charlie. And I will say I was very, very close to Charlie when he picked up what is a bad injury. I would be able to guess exactly what it was from standing there, so I'm going to say it. I'm pretty sure he's done his collarbone. I will have to see what happens from the club, but I think, unfortunately, Charlie is out for a fair while.
Yeah, which means that some pressure is going to come on certain senior players who've had some criticism this year. Be interested now how they step up. Now, we won't go too much into that because, I suppose we'll have to wait to see what happens when we play Leicester in the Cup next weekend. The other player you mentioned, though, and it's a player who this week has been announced, is off to the northeast, off to Geordie lands, in Brandon Jackson. And I think your comment was, I could see why Brandon's being allowed to go. I think there's a surprise that it didn't happen 2 or 3 seasons ago, because I've never been 100% convinced that he was ever going to make it at Saracens. But, got a couple of good tries. He's a big lad. He's a physical specimen. But his defence, as you've mentioned already, is optional, yeah?
A little. There's an awful lot of Ben Harris, I think, about Brandon Jackson. A really good player in attack, a lot of pace, will score you a lot of tries, certainly at Prem Cup level. But yeah, positioning wise and tackling, unfortunately, not his strong point. What I should do really is give you 2 caveats. Number one was the fact that Angus Hall went off, should have gone off after 5 minutes, but went off after 10 minutes. And in fact, I'm just going to come back to that. Angus Hall went down with a knee injury after 4 or 5 minutes. I don't know whether it was a Saracens decision, referee's decision, what, but the game never stopped for it, even though he was sat on the floor for ages. Never stopped. There were line-outs, there were scrums. The game just carried on with him on the ground. He tried to carry on. We could all see that he couldn't run, but he went back to fullback, stood in the line, and lo and behold, Quins have run at him and he couldn't move. and they scored a try. Pretty ridiculous, but it led to Angus Hall, who was a fairly bizarrely senior player in the back line, having to go off, and us bringing on Sever Carver for his debut at 18 years old, and meant that Finn Keylock, who is a fly half, who was starting on the wing, had to go to fullback. So very, very, very inexperienced back line with Brandon Jackson on the wing. So, bit of a caveat for him there. The other one was that the other player that I'm going to mention who had a day where, he was anonymous, basically, was Alex Lazowski. Again, another player who was playing like someone who has got his club for next season, which is a shame because actually some of the games that he's played, certainly the game against Toulouse this year, he was outstanding. But he's been asked to play Prem Cup rugby and he didn't look interested. His movement and positioning wasn't great. And at outside centre might account slightly for Brandon Jackson's positioning, but doesn't completely excuse it. He flew out of the line for one of the tries, didn't just miss a tackle, but I'm not even sure which of the two players he was steaming at, he was aiming for, because it was about 2 meters away from both of them. And yeah, everything from Harlequins went down his wing, and he didn't stop a single player for the whole game, unfortunately. I don't like digging people out, especially when it's just that they're not playing particularly well. But it did just show, to be honest, why the likes of Tobias Elliott, Noah Kalori, Angus Hall, all several years younger than Brandon Jackson, have moved ahead of him in the pecking order. Why he's moving, because he really had a bad day. So unfortunately, between Brandon Jackson and Charlie Bracken, you can probably account for 4 or 5 tries that Harlequin scored, not through just general bad performance. It wasn't a fantastic performance all round, but it wasn't a bad one. And on another day, we'd have absolutely belted them, but mistakes cost us.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you say, because I mean, I know last week Duncan and Loxley talks about Alex Lazowski moving on, and the comment was that he didn't want to leave. But I mean, I suppose the problem for Alex is that he's 32 years old, and I mean, are you going to give him the contract that he wants? He clearly wanted probably a 3-year deal. You're not going to give that when you've got to keep your salary cap under control. And you've got youngsters coming through performing. So, Alex, I'm afraid, and as much as he's a lovely guy and he's been a great player for the club over the years, it was the right decision for the club, and I don't think they did it too badly. Obviously, there's a little bit of rancor there on Alex's part because he felt he deserved another contract, but I'm sure every player would do. The problem with Brandon is, I think, and I think you just had to compare him to a player who's an age contemporary of his, or around about the same age, and that's in Rotimi Shegan. And Rotimi's been there at the same time as Ben Harris, who you've already mentioned, and other players that have we thought maybe would be the next ones to step up. Yeah, Elliot Obiantimbi, Nathan Earl is another one that left. Did a couple of things elsewhere, but haven't really kicked on because they're too good for the Championship, but they're perhaps not good enough for the Premiership. And the gulf between the Championship and the Premiership is so that maybe that's a problem. And a player like Brandon, you go to Newcastle. Is he going to improve Newcastle? Is he going to take Newcastle to the next level? I very much doubt it. And that's not me being nasty or cruel. That's just me offering up what I see as facts of the situation.
Oh yeah, unfortunately so. It's going back to Loz as well. I mean, you can understand a little bit. He's a senior player. He's just been told he's not wanted by the club and he's moving on. And then he's also been asked to play a Prem Cup game. You can understand him being a little bit miffed about it. I do get that. And the fact that our centre pairing on the day was Ollie Hartley and Alex Lazowski, which you look at and go, that's for the Prem Cup, that's a good lineup, and we should be able to run rings around it. And Nick Tompkins came off the bench for Loz at centre as well. Shows that the centres that we've got around are mostly injured. There's not a lot of depth around. But at the end of the day, someone with the commitment to the club would have put a decent performance in. And Ollie Hartley was pretty good. And Nick Tompkins, when he came on, was fine as well. I've been critical of Nick this season because I don't think he's been offering much, particularly dynamically. But he was okay. There were better players on the pitch than all three of those, and most of those players were younger and more inexperienced, and we should probably talk about them.
Well, we'll do. I'm just going to quickly mention on that one that there may well be a case here that the doctor's come in, hasn't he? He's identified some players who perhaps need a rocket, and his way of doing it is to say, well, you aren't going to play Prem Cup. We're your employers. And likewise, Tom Willis. Last season, Tom Willis would never have played in a Prem Cup game. Not in a million years we've done. But he said he's off to France at the end of the season, so they're going to get his pound of flesh and a little bit more, aren't they?
Well, yeah. And Tom Willis played and was excellent. He was Tom Willis. I'm not going to praise him too much because the players that he was up against, he should have run over, and he did. Yeah. But yeah, we're still getting that commitment out of Tom Willis, and this goes back to my constant whinge at the moment on our WhatsApp group. We're playing the same players over and over again who used to be good players. I'd like to see us for the rest of the season. If I'm not saying we've talked about Loz. If he's not fully committed to playing for Saracens for the rest of this season, then don't play him. He can rot for a few months, as far as I'm concerned. But I don't think he is that character, and I think he will be involved, and I think he'll have some good games for the rest of this season. But if there is anyone like that, then we don't play them. And some of these younger players that we've got that are screaming for an opportunity, give it to them. Because if we're not, I'm not convinced that we're not looking at potentially top four still this year, things like that. But we don't learn anything, we don't gain anything, we don't develop anything by seeing people not be 100% finish fifth. Meanwhile, we've got good, promising young players twiddling their thumbs waiting for something, and some of them could move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine balancing act, isn't it? And I think we'll go through the rest of this season with the tried and trusted, because it's just the way it is. And yeah, I do have a certain amount of sympathy with your point of view there. That what do we learn? But also, I think if you take a really hard-nosed, objective look at it and say, what is our best opportunity to get top four? And up until the point then it's physically impossible for us to get top four, then I think you go tried and trusted as much as it's painful and say, your Owen Farrell's play, your Jamie George play, your Alex Zazowski, your Nick Tompkins play, because they've got enough credit in the bank just up until the point that credit runs out. And I think if Mark McCall was staying on and was rebuilding for the next 5 years, I would have a lot more support for your argument, Matt. Not saying I don't have any support for your argument, because I do, but I'd have a lot more support if I thought that Mark McCall was going and was staying and was going on for another 2 or 3 seasons, as opposed to the likelihood of Brendan Venter coming in, having a season, then another coming in and starting another rebuild in 2027. So, yeah, I mean, I can see it from both sides. But, yeah, until it's physically impossible for us to get top four, I personally would go with what we know, what we got and what we know. We talk to the young lads and we say, if an opportunity comes, we trust in you to step in there and take that opportunity. But at the moment, this is the way we're going. But, stick with us. You're still young. There's plenty of time ahead of you. And we want, and put the arm around the shoulder as you tell them. Don't just make them hold tackle bags and give them no explanation whatsoever.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I'm not advocating for chucking an 18-year-old out there and saying good luck. It's players. You look at the league game against Newcastle. We're 50 points up. What do we get out of Max Malins coming off the bench for Elliot Daly after 50 minutes? Why wasn't that? Not necessarily Brandon Jackson, obviously, but why wasn't that one of the younger players that we've got in the squad? I mean, I mentioned Ollie Hartley. He's a young fella. He is a part of the senior squad, but has gone missing a little bit from the 23. Why hasn't he got the opportunities he has? And if we go to the players that did play well this weekend, Louis Johnson at 10 was, I was going to say brilliant. That might be overdoing it a bit, but he looked good. He showed some promise, and he showed why he should be playing some league minutes. But he'll play this run of Prem Cup games and disappear into the ether again.
Yeah, he may well do. I don't know. I suppose it all bows down to, as I say, the conversations I had. But you mentioned Louis Johnson there. What did he do so good, and who else shone for you, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Louis looked dynamic. It was all front football. He was the assist man for a lot of the tries that we scored. He took the ball to the gain line and kicked very well as well. I think he missed one conversion, which on a day when fair few tries are out wide, and it was a bit, certainly in the second half, was a bit wet and drizzly. You can't really ask for more than that. Another player who I think has been name-checked by a lot of people already, which is great doing writing, but I can never get his name right when I say it, is Teo Adegbemile, who was playing in
you to say.
Exactly. Playing in the engine room, looked lively, looked really good in the line-out, and to be perfectly honest, he played better than the senior man next to him in Nick Ezekwe. I think really one to watch. I think he's just as capable of playing at 6 as well. And Charlie West and Nathan Mikolo in the back row, again, consistent. They've both been consistent players. Mikolo for longer, Prem Cup level, but Charlie West certainly last season had a good few games. Both of them looked pretty bright, putting themselves about. So at the breakdown, we were fine. And Harvey Beaton, going to caveat again with, I don't know who Quinns' replacement loosehead was, but potentially someone they picked up off the bus stop 2 minutes before the game. Because when he came on, Harvey Beaton had him on toast and then some, to the point that we were winning penalties in around their 22 and choosing a scrum every single time and winning another penalty and taking a scrum again and winning another penalty until eventually this loosehead got yellow carded. The starting loosehead came back on and all of a sudden the scrum looked a pretty even battle again. But we still were winning scrum penalties, and it is actually what led eventually to a scoring a try out wide with Sever Carver on his debut dotting down with 2 minutes to go and us thinking we've done this fantastic smash and grab to win the game. It was all down to that scrum work from Harvey Beaton. Unfortunately, didn't come to anything because they managed to score on Brandon Jackson's wing again with Brandon Jackson not on it. But, there's a good few players there that did play well. And there's probably an awful lot more besides that are a bit more nuanced that I couldn't pick out. James Hadfield, solid again. I think Owen Clark, when he came on again, was pretty decent. So that's two hookers in and around the squad that are dependable. It wasn't a bad performance. We lost 43-40, and it was really, really frustrating because some of it was dreadful. Some of it was entertaining, and we've unfortunately come out on the wrong end of it. If it was the other way round, it would just be, what an entertaining Prem Cup game.
And indeed, I suppose if you're a neutral, you would have loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an entertaining game. It was just, one of those where, like you say, defence pretty optional. I suppose the only other person to pick out, because he did come on for Charlie Bracken and looked pretty good, was Gareth Simpson. And obviously we're going to see a little bit of him for the rest of the season, I think. So, it was good to see him come on. I think a few people are a little bit critical because it was his box kick that gave Quinns the ball back for them to score a try. He just lumped it as far down the pitch as he possibly could. That's all he could do.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, it sounds like you had fun, sort of, anyway, Matt. I know, and given your pronunciations there, one day we would have to do a Fezcast where we do the Saracens 15 of unpronounceable named players, because I think we could probably put one of those together, couldn't we?
I think there's quite a lot of them, yeah. We've certainly over the years we've had a few. Between you and I, we butcher them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'd butcher Smith if he was playing, wouldn't I? But there you go. And so Duncan certainly would do, wouldn't he? But there we go. Look, Matt, let's finish up there. I'll say thank you, everybody, for listening in. I don't know what you got planned for the rest of the week, but I know I've got to say good luck to my missus because this is going out Wednesday morning. So sometime today, she's having her second hip replacement operation, which could be almost as painful as what I'm doing on Thursday night, which is I'm making my comedy stand-up debut at the Apocryphy Tap in Banbury. So I've got a 5 minute slot for me to tell. As I said to you before, I said I'm going to go buying two loves of mine, which is music and shit jokes.
Well, I'm going to have to ask Shaz then. What's more painful, her hip replacement, or listening to you do 10 minutes of stand up?
Well, put it this way: if you knew what her quiz team name was when I do a music quiz at the Apocryphy Tap, it's not another bloody Jez quiz. So I mean, yeah, she does very well to be married to me for 13 years or whatever it is, and they're coming up and still not have stabbed me for any of my jokes. So there you go. But I'm not sure who's back next week. Maybe you and me again, Matt. We've been old days again.
Could be. I mean, I'm intending to go to next week's game. I don't know who else is, so it might be me. Sorry, everyone.
Well, I can't make next week's game for obvious reasons because I shall be Florence Nightingale for Sharon, but I'm sure that we'll be. Obviously, I'll be watching the Six Nations as well, so we could talk all about that. But I'll say until next week. Thanks, Matt, for your time. Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and we hope you enjoyed this edition of the Retro Fezcast, as we perhaps would call it. And we'll see you all next week on another edition of the Fezcast. But until then, say thank you, everybody, and all the best.
Ta-ra.
This is the Fezcast.